Welcome to What? That Old Queen, a candid and adult take on queer life quandaries at a certain age. So please listen at your own discretion. Presented by Bernie and Tommy, their views are their own and in no way reflect those of any service you may hear this program on. Now, let your ears be upstanding for the Old Queen. Hey Tommy, it's Easter.
Happy Easter. I can't say what is on your T-shirt because someone in the room might find it quite triggering.
It's a trigger T-shirt.
Yeah. But that's a Philip Normal T-shirt, isn't it?
It is a Philip Normal T-shirt.
And
yeah.
I've just purchased one myself. And I'm not really one for slogans on T-shirts, but I've always wanted a T-shirt that says "Busy Mum," and he's got one of those. So I'm waiting for it to arrive.
Amazing. We did actually ask Philip Normal to come on the show, but he hasn't responded.
Well, that doesn't mean to say that he won't.
No, he's obviously quite busy with his La T-shirt campaign, which is HIV and AIDS.
Yeah.
And I want to give a bit of a shout out to a friend of ours, the Birchess, who's doing 2,000 burpees during April for a bone cancer charity.
Great.
But
do you do burpees yourself?
I burp. But I don't do burpees.
I usually do a circuit class online with some other people on a Friday, but they moved it to Thursday because it's Good Friday tomorrow, sorry. And I was the only one in the Zoom room today. And so she said, well, you've been asking for a personal training session today. Let's just do it now instead.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And were burpees on the menu?
No, they weren't. Yeah, it was all using my dumbbell weight.
Okay. In here?
Yeah. Can you not tell now that I've got all the body of it?
Well, I did wonder. I was going to say. And what's it like finally having a personal trainer?
She has been my personal trainer in the past, actually. For my show Haunted Existence, I was desperate to learn how to do headstands. But I wanted to do it while someone else was in the room with me, because it felt like a scary thing to do on your own.
Yeah.
She helped me through that process, and did a lot of strengthening exercise, like where you need strong wrists to do a headstand.
Right. Okay. So you've been working on your wrists, your wrist action.
Yeah. I won't tell you how.
I think I've been working on mine most of lockdown. But I do alternate hands, so you get a balance of wrist strength.
Yeah. You've got very strong wrists. That bracelet is very tight.
Yeah, well, I've double braceleted up because I've got a bit of a Wonder Woman fetish.
Do you usually wear a bracelet?
Yeah, always.
Okay.
Always.
You're a constant source of surprises.
I know, right? I'm full of surprises. So Easter, I was quite curious just to see how queer Easter is.
Yes, I'd be curious to know that.
And is it queer at all? I mean, is it as camp as Christmas?
I hope so.
Me too. So we're going to open up that Cabinet of Queeriousities again today and see how queer Easter is.
Okay.
But have you got anything else Easter themed for us?
Yeah, I have got my Easter holiday book, which is things to make and do in the Easter holidays. It's a publication that I bought for 25p. Which is money well spent, as far as I'm concerned.
Totally.
And it features a picture of some children painting some eggs on the cover. I guess it's from the late 70s, early 80s. It was originally priced at 30p in the time of its publication, so it's gone down by 5p.
So it's depreciated in value.
Which is significant. And it's got things like felt brooches, how to make a simple but attractive brooch, and it's got tidy boxes, bird masks. But the one I was drawn to was the macaroni bead, which is basically means threading strings of macaroni through thread and painting them bright colours. And it says, it's very simple, it's only 2 instructions, but the headline is, here's to make a gay Easter present for a mum or a sister.
Or a brother, or a father. I mean, I reckon we can all wear some macaroni beads if we want to, right?
Oh, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you make a macaroni brooch?
It doesn't go into that, but it's got felt brooches. I don't like a felt brooch, and what I don't like, I'm sorry if I'm offending people, but I don't like a woolen hat with a felt flower on the top.
Oh, wow.
It really upsets me.
Why does it upset you?
I don't know. I just want to rip that felt off and say, it's just a woolly hat. Don't pretend it's something else.
What if you put an encrusted brooch on it?
I don't like any, I like to wear a woolly hat occasionally. I haven't got really the right head for a hat, but I would wear a woolly hat if needed. But I don't like it to be anything but a woolly hat. I feel like it's lying to us.
Yeah, don't hide the woolly hat. Well, actually, you've got a bit of a woolly hat on your teapot.
I have, yeah.
Which is Easter themed.
Have I told you about this teapot cover, cozy?
Well, you haven't told the listeners about this teapot cover.
So this teapot cozy was sent to me by my friend Anne Phil. It's got a long-winded story, but it's made by someone that is shielding, and they knit these amazing... I think this one is styled as a marquee with Easter balls on the top, very brightly coloured. It's made by a shielding person, and they then take it to their front garden, and the bus driver picks it up and then takes it to someone's nephew, who then takes it to someone else who runs a cafe in Dorset, and then that's where my friend Annie picked it up and she sent it to me.
Amazing. It's almost like smuggling.
But she likes to go to all these kind of very countrified, sort of like village fete type occasions where people show off their wares.
Oh, yeah.
And the last time she went to one, she went on this display, and there was a whole sort of scene of all these kind of clone beardy men in sort of thongs, all knitted together, having a really good time.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, she sent me photos, but she didn't send me the actual sculptural object, if I can call it that.
Well, it's interesting because it's got lots of eggs on the top, like knitted eggs, aren't they?
Yeah.
Are they meant to be eggs?
I don't really know what it is. Yeah, it's just...
They're bobbly.
It's just a lot of everything, isn't it?
Okay, very gaudy. I like it. And what I also like about your book is they're making decorated eggs. When I was in junior school, I got highly recommended in the decorated egg. I didn't win anything. I think I should have won. But actually, my mum did most of the work. But I was the brains behind it. I made a little alien with lots of little, candy balls all over it.
Is there any photo documentation of this?
No, it was the 70s. No one took any photos.
There's one in there that I really like as well, which is where you get a tray of soil and you plant cress.
Oh, yeah.
And then you plant it, and you can spell a word I think there's suggestions like Easter or happy or various things like that. But I was going to do it with the word cunt. Because I thought that might be something that actually people that I know would like to receive as a gift.
Yeah, they'd appreciate that.
But I've left it too late, as usual.
You know who would appreciate that? Probably Philip Normal.
Yeah.
So come on the show. Anyway, should we delve back into the Cabinet of Queeriousities? As it's Easter,
Yeah.
we might as well. You never know, there might be some old chocolate in there that we could eat.
I hope so.
Right, okay, so let's delve into the Cabinet of Queeriousities and see how queer Easter is. Watch out for that box, Tommy.
I know, but I'm so tempted.
It's a bit lethal in here.
It's a health and safety nightmare. Health or safety, that's what I like. One or the other.
Yeah. It's definitely like that in the Cabinet of Queeriousities. So, we're in the Easter section. It's not that full, I hasten to add. It's not as full as the Christmas section. So, can you find anything?
Well, I found this one item that you might be interested in.
Oh, yeah.
It's called Easter in Berlin.
Oh.
And apparently Easter in Berlin was founded in 1975. And it's the biggest leather and fetish event in Europe. It takes place in Berlin every year at Easter, March or February. And it's a meeting organised by members of the club, the BLF, Berlin Leather and Fetish, which in the past has used the event to elect the title holder, German Mr. Leather, on Easter Sunday.
Right.
I didn't think they'd nominated Easter Sunday. Each year, thousands of leather, rubber, sportswear, skin and uniform lovers from all around the world come together to join all different kinds of fetish events in Berlin. And the centre of the fetish event is at Nollenfeld.
Lollendorfplatz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The classical gay area in the western part of Berlin.
Do you think they're doing it on Zoom this year?
Well, I don't know how much kink can happen on Zoom, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I've tried.
Lord knows we've all tried.
Yeah. I flashed my bum on a Zoom party on more than one occasion. But it doesn't go down well.
No, not during those meetings. So what have I got? So I found some kind of churchy trinkets in the Cabinet of Queeriousities, and this one is it's a dog collar from Jim Matulski, the Reverend Jim Matulski, and he says no week tells the story of his gay life as a gay man quite like Easter. The story begins with Palm Sunday, Jesus' jaunty entry into Jerusalem, where people place their cloaks, tree branches on his path to welcome him. Matulski says this feels like a gay pride parade, a public and political celebration beyond government control. Holy Week then invokes a broader and deeper arc of gay life. He says, from the violation of Jesus' due process and a Last Supper with outcasts like him, to betrayals by those closest to him, his crucifixion, then resurrection, a new life after coming out from his tomb. I mean, I think that these might be tenuous links. And predominantly gay churches in America apparently embrace the unique theology that shows parishioners how the Bible reflects many of the struggles they face every day. On no day is it more true than today, Easter, the faith's most sacred day of the year. Easter evokes from us the experience of resurrection in our own bodies, in our own spirits, said Matulski, the pastor in the New Community Church in Berkeley. It's not just a retelling, it's an embodiment. What do you think about that?
I was hypnotised by your hand movements.
I know. I do that in the booth when I'm doing voiceovers all the time. There's actually a lot of movement that goes on in the body with voiceovers. It's not just the voice.
But I would say it felt a bit tenuous.
I think it is a bit tenuous, but we were talking, we were on Bristol 24/7 Queer Catch Up, and we talked about, we've done a couple of programs on spirituality, and I think it's interesting how queer LGBTQ plus people can actually find some solace in spiritual movements. And actually, those early Christians were really persecuted. So actually, they should have a lot of solidarity with us because we've been the same, mainly due to Christians. But Anyway, let's brush over that. But I'm glad that people are finding solace in it.
I mean, there's some great stories, so you're bound to be able to read something into it that you connect with.
Yeah, totally. Have you got anything else?
Well, it says Easter is partially about sex.
Oh, yeah.
So some people claim that Easter is named after Ishtar.
It sounds similar.
The Assyrian. Yeah. I think you've corrected me on that before. The Assyrian and Babylon goddess of sex and fertility, whose symbols were bunnies and eggs, which is why I got you that little golden bunny.
I know, thank you.
But that's true. Nevertheless, the holiday was adapted from pagan holidays celebrating the start of spring and whose holidays often involve the acknowledgement of sex. In fact, this day is spring awakening, often refers to the arousal of sexual desire in young people, even same-sex desire.
Of course. So there's been a definite change. I mean, it's been quite warm in the UK this week. I know it's going to get a bit colder again next week. But
I'm actually really cold now.
It's definitely cooler this evening. But do you find that the heat kind of
yes, I think
lifts
it
up
does.
your libido?
Yes, I think it does, yeah.
Okay. I definitely think it does for me.
Is there any science in that?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe I should have researched that, shouldn't I? Anyway, let's move on. This other little trinket I've got is another churchy one. It's a bit controversial. So I'm going to do this a bit tongue-in-cheek, but lots of people think Jesus was pretty gay.
What are they called? The Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
They used to come round and they had this pamphlet and they had all these very striking images of Jesus looking very hot indeed. And we used to say, can we have the pictures of hot Jesus?
I mean, they've missed out on a whole marketing campaign, haven't they? You know, they could get, if they want extra flock, they should just market it to gay men, basically. Anyway, while Easter officially observes the resurrection of Jesus, he himself was arguably gay. He was a notorious bachelor who spent his time hanging around with 12 dudes who literally loved and worshipped him. Judas even kissed him before he died. Jesus went a step further and told his disciples to leave their wives. He tells them, if you come to me, but will not leave your family, you cannot be my follower. You must love me more than your father, your mother, your children, your brothers and your sisters, even more than your own life. One queer Christian theologist even recently claimed that Jesus was pansexual and polyamorous. But I think that might be going a little bit too far. I mean, where's the proof in that?
Did you miss out the bit about it? Oh, in Luke 14:26, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I thought, I know so many Lukes and they're all gay. What's that about?
Do you think Luke
Is a gay name?
Yep. Do you think he was gay?
I don't know.
Is that why he wrote this down, saying you had to leave your family to follow Jesus? Anyway, for those of you with deeply religious beliefs, we apologise if we've offended you. This is just a little trinket we found in the Cabinet of Queeriousities. So have you got anything else? Let's move to the Jewish faith now. Let's see who else we can offend.
Well, I actually had a beautiful moment because I'm part of a group called Assembly, and we meet every morning at 8:50, and we have a little chit chat as we're having our breakfast, and then at 9 o'clock sharp, someone does a 10-minute presentation about anything they want to, and it happens every day of the week.
Right.
And it's happened. Well, we just celebrated our year because it's been a year since lockdown.
Yeah.
And someone a Jewish friend of mine did a presentation about Passover.
Oh.
And it's just, and she's done a few Jewish presentations before, and I just think it's such a beautiful religion. It feels very celebratory, very community-based. So it says here anyway, the Jewish holiday of Passover, also called Piesh.
Yep.
Often overlaps with Easter and celebrates God's liberation of the Jews from the Egyptian slavery. As such, many LGBTQ plus identified Jews now recognise Passover as a continuation of their struggle from the social oppression and the stigma to freedom. And it was Moses that led that freedom for us. And I always liked Moses. You know, he looks a lovely guy. I like the way that he can navigate water.
Me too.
Yeah.
That's very camp as well, isn't it? It's like, out of my way.
And he looks a bit more like a trim Santa to me.
Yeah. Well, they all did, didn't they? Kind of.
Yeah, possibly.
I mean, I like to think that I look a bit like a trim Santa. Anyway, I've got one more last trinket in the Easter section. So LGBTQ people have been making Easter more queer year after year. Even before LGBTQ affirming churches began to welcome us to Easter services, LGBTQ people increasingly queered the holiday with celebrations of their own. San Francisco, along with Berlin, obviously we've mentioned one in Berlin, holds an annual Hunky Jesus contest in Dolores Park. Well, very apt. We've just been talking about that. Often with a drag queen host. New Orleans holds an annual gay Easter parade, which often features LGBTQ folks wearing ridiculously large, wildly decorated hats. Oh, I love the... Do you know what? One of my favourite films is Easter Parade.
Yes.
Love it. Yeah. And Obama...
With your Easter bonnet, with all the frills upon it, you'll be the smartest
something in the Easter parade. Yeah. And apparently President Obama, who was obviously very queer-friendly, invited a gay bishop and same-sex couples to the White House for an Easter egg hunt. And... apparently, the site Queerty pointed out the films and fashions of Easter are bright and gay indeed. Well, you love all the colours of Easter, don't you?
Love them, yeah.
Easter bonnet, Easter parade is as camp as it
and
can
Easter
be.
egg hunt. I said to my neighbour, because my neighbour texted me and said, "I've got an Easter bunny for you. You've got the other one, and can I come down and give it to you?" And I said, "Well, I'm in the middle of a Zoom meeting, but why don't you hide it? And then I could do an Easter hunt." And she said, "I'm a bit worried about the rats."
The Easter rats. I mean, maybe that's a new thing that you could have, an Easter rat instead of an Easter bunny.
Well, they're about the same size.
Tommy, I have to say, I love your bunny outfit today as well. It looks great. Those ears are amazing. Anyway, we have a fabulous guest waiting in the throne room. So we're going to have a little break now, and we'll be back after this.
Hi! This isn't a sponsorship ad because we don't have any and we don't have any adverts, but you can help us get some by sharing this episode on social media. Then we can get some adverts and some sponsorship, and we'll be able to carry on with this queeniest of old queeniest of podcasts. Before then, if you can spare some cash, we have a Patreon account, so click on the link below and give us your dosh now. Thanks for listening.
Great. So we're back, and we have a fabulous guest. But before we say that, so we have a little break plea thing these days, and I just want to say that we've got a donation button on our website. So if you'd like, you can leave a one-off donation. So if you'd like to add to mine and Tommy's chocolate fund for the week, as it's Easter, you can click on that and give whatever you like. But we're back, and we've got a fabulous guest. Tommy, would you like to introduce our guest?
I'd love to introduce our guest. It's a great pleasure to introduce Natasha Broad. Natasha, how are you?
Thank you. Yeah, really well. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. I've been working with you little bits over the years, really, in different capacities.
Yeah, for a while now. Yeah.
Can you tell us, like, who you are and what you do?
Yeah, certainly. So my name is Natasha. I use she and her pronouns. And I do all sorts of different things really in Bristol. So I'm based in Bristol and have been for about 5 years now. And I'm involved in lots of different things to do with LGBTQ plus communities. So I work within HIV awareness and health promotion particularly. So looking at testing and prevention of HIV and other STIs and looking at people having safer sex and, good sexual health. I work with LGBTQ plus young people. And then I am also one of the Bristol City Fellows. So that's a project which looks at involving LGBTQ plus people. Well, my role is to involve LGBTQ plus people in some of the citywide decisions, particularly in relation to the One City Plan and planning for Bristol of the future.
And what is the One City Plan? Because it's quite a unique one, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So the One City Plan, it is quite unique for Bristol, and it's something that lots of other cities look to. And the idea of the One City Plan is that we are essentially planning for the next 30 years of Bristol, and we are looking at lots and lots of different areas. So that might be transport, that might be the environment, that might be education, and it's about working together and involving lots of different marginalised groups within society, ultimately, to plan for the future of Bristol. And also to think about what we want Bristol to look like. So one of the big questions at the minute is, what will Bristol look like in 2030? What will Bristol look like in 2050? And how can we plan for that? And what can we do now to start the ball rolling for those things? So it's quite strategic, but it is, really kind of forward thinking in terms of what we are going to be doing.
So you said that you've been working in Bristol for, did you say 5 years or no?
5 years, yeah.
5 years. Where are you from? Because I detect a Bristol accent in your voice, but maybe I'm completely wrong.
Well, I'm from Lincolnshire originally.
Okay.
And then
completely wrong. Completely wrong.
Completely wrong. But I would say I lived in Norfolk for 10 years, and the Norfolk accent and the Bristol accent are quite similar. So perhaps there's like an element of
there might be a little bit of a twang there.
Yeah.
I'm a voice artist, and I didn't spot it. So Tommy, you're picking up on stuff. Can we talk about the HIV stuff, because we've done a couple of shows on HIV, and we did one with John East, which was Getting Tested Week, I think, and we were talking about It's a Sin, which is
we did one with us also with David Stewart from the was it 52 Dean Street?
Yeah, 56 Dean Street. Yeah, I love David Stewart.
Yeah, he's gorgeous.
Yeah, he was brilliant
and so articulate.
I met him at an event and he was like, oh, let's take a selfie. But he was like, I'm going to take it from underneath and you have to like look nonchalant and stare into the distance. And as soon as someone tells you to not look nonchalant, like, absolutely not. It's the geekiest selfie ever, but it's fun. David Stewart's fun.
No, he was really good fun and really good. But I want to talk about It's a Sin because it brought HIV awareness to the mainstream again. And some people think it's more of an issue of the past, but it obviously isn't. Mm-hmm. So in terms of generational awareness of like the older generation of the LGBTQ plus community and the wider community with HIV and the younger generation, what do you think the differences are?
I think that's really interesting because I think, I have quite a specific viewpoint, I think, because the young people that I work with are really interested and really invested in HIV awareness. But what we do know is that isn't necessarily universal and people don't learn about HIV in schools. That education isn't there really, because exactly as you've just said there, people think that it's something that existed 20 or 30 years ago. So the young people that I see have got a real appetite for it. I suppose what's quite interesting and the differences could be, if we look at the younger generations, their knowledge, or at least, some people's knowledge is far more, we think about U equals U, we think about PrEP. Pre-exposure prophylaxis stops a person from contracting HIV, U equals U, undetectable equals untransmittable. And I think because that information is far more readily available, some younger people don't see HIV in the same way that older generations do, because obviously they had a very, very different experience of HIV. And that can also mean that we sometimes, and this isn't to generalize at all, but we sometimes see a bit of a difference around like attitudes towards PrEP, for example, where some people, older people might say that PrEP is really beneficial and has taken away some of the fear around HIV. But then there's also the flip side of that, where people say, well, actually having a drug like PrEP available means that people might make decisions around their sex lives that they wouldn't have done otherwise. So there is like massive gaps in HIV awareness and knowledge, but I think also a real appetite on all sides, particularly within LGBTQ plus communities, to look at and explore what we can do about that. And I think also recognising that the story around HIV is still that we talk largely about white cisgender gay men, and actually HIV has really changed in that sense as well, in that, you know, if we look at the new diagnoses in men who have sex with men are falling and diagnoses in other groups are rising, and so we need to change some of that narrative around how we think about and talk about HIV.
That's really interesting. Yeah. So do you see groups that are being affected more by HIV? I've heard reports around like older people that are coming out of relationships that are going into kind of having more sort of different kinds of sexual relationships all the time. Is that something?
Yeah, 100%. So we're seeing a real rise in new HIV diagnosis in older heterosexual people. And if you think exactly as you've just said there, Tom, like if people were have been in long-term relationships and perhaps the knowledge that they were given around safer sex and around HIV meant that it's something that they don't think is going to affect them. It's not something they have to think about. If you're a bit older and perhaps having sex and there isn't a risk of pregnancy, for example, then things, thinking around barrier methods, thinking around ways of protecting yourself against STIs might not be at the forefront of your mind. And so, yeah, absolutely, we're seeing a real rise. And I think as well, if you think about the way that we talk about older people and sexuality, and there's a real assumption that older people don't have sex. Yeah. And I think that's less true in LGBTQ plus communities. But I think outside of that, there's a real assumption that older people don't have sex and therefore safer sex messages don't need to be directed at them.
Yeah, we did a big piece on ageism in the last episode. And I think there's so many stigmas with growing older. They think that older people don't do certain things, but actually they do. And I personally know a lot of women that perhaps are middle-aged. They've gone through their menopause, and because they don't have the risk of getting pregnant, they don't think about protection. And actually, the HIV stuff is a real issue for that, because it's just like you're exposing yourself to that.
100%, yeah. And if you were, if you were in a long-term relationship or entering a long-term relationship in kind of late 80s, early 90s, then chances are what you heard about HIV was that it wasn't something that affected you. If you're a cisgender woman, it's not something that you would be thinking about in relation to yourself, because that was very much, but is still the narrative that we hear around HIV. So yeah, people just think, well, that's not something I have to worry about. And yeah, sexual health more generally, how often do people think about and talk about STIs? It's so often just about risk of pregnancy. And if there isn't a risk of pregnancy in the sex that you're having, then people don't think about some of the other things. And that's not like the fault of the individual. That's the fault of the messaging that we put out and that we see over and over again.
Yeah, totally.
What did you think about It's a Sin, the show? Because I just got so seduced by it, and it was, I found it such a captivating drama, and the characters were brilliant. But then after, thinking about it a bit, thinking about the female character and thinking about her being quite one-dimensional, really. and actually lots of people commenting on that on social media, and I wondered how you felt about that.
Yeah, I think similarly, really. I loved it. I was really wrapped up in it, and I loved it. But I also think what's really important is that we realise that it is a story about HIV, but it's not the story about HIV. And it told a very particular, it was a real snapshot in time, wasn't it? But equally, HIV still exists. HIV has always existed in groups outside of those queer men that are portrayed in It's a Sin. But I think if we reflect on some of the impact that it's had, so for example, in testing week, which you were talking about, so testing week got pushed back this year. It's normally in November, but because of COVID, it was in February this year. And it was just after It's a Sin had aired. And THT saw 4 times as many HIV self-testing kits ordered during testing week as they have in any other testing week. So the it's a sin effect is really real. So whilst it certainly wasn't like a perfect depiction, I think it did some really powerful things. What I really loved was, spoiler alert, I guess, if people haven't seen it, but at the end when Richie's reflecting about how, like, what a good time he had. And I thought that was really refreshing, that he was like, I loved it. I had such a wonderful time. But also if we think of the impact that might then have around HIV prevention messages, that's really important as well.
I just got tingles when you were talking about that, because it just struck me about the kind of absolute connection between art or theatre or film or TV and public health, really. Like they feel so connected in that moment.
Yeah, 100%.
It can entertain and inform, and that's the whole thing. I mean, that's one of the things we try and do in this podcast. So I'm going to go back to the intergenerational thing that you do, because I was reading your article on Bristol City Fellows, and something we're trying to do with this podcast is make things accessible in an entertaining way and inform people in an entertaining way. And we guested on the Bristol 24/7 Queer Catch-Up recently, and they mentioned a lot about the lack of queer spaces. And how do you think we can tackle this? And how can these spaces have a broad appeal for the different generations to use so that they can actually engage with each other?
It's really tricky, isn't it? But I think Bristol's great in a lot of ways. But if we think about queer spaces, what we often think of is bars and nightclubs and places where you drink and you dance. And actually, even if you do have loads of different people of, different ages, different backgrounds there isn't that much opportunity for conversation or connection. I think that Bristol is really lacking like a community space, and there are groups that exist, but they're quite fragmented in lots of ways. And I know that there's lots of things happening right now which feel quite exciting around the potential of almost like a queer community centre. But I think what we always try and do with the youth group that I work with, what we always try and do is encourage our young people to think of themselves as being part of something bigger. So, at 13 or 14, when you come and join a session, you've got all these generations of people that have come before you, and we can learn from them and they can learn from us. And it's about tying into that and recognizing that we've all got different experiences of being queer. We've all got different understandings of being queer, and that all of that brings value. And I think sometimes it can be really easy for, it to feel quite divisive around like language, for example, but just having the opportunity to have a conversation around some of that stuff, and to understand what's come before. Like, we recognise people use different words about themselves, but if you haven't lived that experience, then it's really hard to understand maybe where some of that thought's coming from. So what we really encourage is for people just to be super open-minded and recognise that there is, we are a community ultimately, and we're stronger together. And it's when we become divided, that things then become trickier, I guess.
And also, I think that with the older generation is actually a lot of our experiences are actually very similar, and I think all of those generations need to remember that when we're talking to each other about these different issues.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm planning to do over the next few months. I want to set up some intergenerational conversations between LGBTQ plus people and pick up on some of those threads of like, what was your experience as, a queer person in Bristol 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and then how does that reflect and kind of is similar to what's happening now, and also what were the differences? Because I think, things have changed, but that doesn't mean ultimately we're all still fighting for equality, right? And what that equality looks like and how we're fighting for that looks different. But what we are still doing, like the groups and the focus might have changed, but what we're all still doing is fighting to be recognised.
It's the beautiful thing that you just said. And I'm halfway through reading June Sarpong's book called Diversify.
Okay.
And I've done quite a lot of reading around race, and it's mostly about race actually, but she starts really with talking about things that unite us, things that bring us together rather than things that pull us apart, and it feels very relevant to what we're talking about now.
Yeah, certainly. And I think there's a really lovely quote, and I don't know who it's by, so I won't pretend that I do, but like the idea that queers everywhere are responsible for queers anywhere. And I think that's really true. You know, what we, again, really try and encourage is things might be really great comparatively in Bristol, say, or in the UK, but what is happening elsewhere in the world, and what can we do to support and platform and show solidarity? Because it is that idea of, you know, we're all in it together, and that might look different in different parts of the world. But yeah, what can we do to make ourselves stronger ultimately?
Yeah, it's really interesting because when I look at some of the stats for this podcast, even, we have been listened to like in practically every continent around the world, which is amazing. But in some countries where they have a really oppressive regime, and it's not legal to be LGBTQ plus. So, and I just hope that we're showing some solidarity with those people, and that they know that there's other people out there in the world that are with them.
Yeah, exactly that. And like, we did some work recently with an organisation in Brazil, and you know, when we talk about and think about Brazil, we think about really poor LGBTQ plus rights. But what had happened and what this organisation was a part of was around electing trans women into positions of power, and they had won elections with like landslide victories, and that's incredible, right?
Amazing.
But you know, I read a lot of queer news and I hadn't heard about that. So it's like, well, what's going on elsewhere in the world, and how can we make it so that those success stories get shared just as much as the negative stories, just as much as the horrible stuff, because we see that all the time.
Yeah.
And what can we do, exactly as you're saying there, to be like, no, there are people out there.
Yeah.
And the pandemic, I feel like, has taught us that we are just being controlled by what people want to tell us. And so, yeah, we need to hear stories that are outside of like the way that we normally feed media into our lives.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, queer identities, LGBTQ plus people, like, they deserve to be celebrated. It's not about acceptance or tolerance. It is about celebration and recognizing what we bring to the world as individuals and as a community. And I think that's ultimately what we're striving for, I think.
Yeah, totally. Tommy, you wanted to ask a question of Natasha.
Yeah, well, yes, I've always been a big fan of your hair.
Thank you very much.
And one of my favourite podcasts is Fortunately, which is basically geared at middle-aged women, I think, really. But I'm a big fan, and they always sort of they always kind of stop it with like sharing beauty tips or moisturiser tips. And your hair, I feel like you could do a shampoo advert if you weren't doing the work that you were doing. And I wondered, how did you get your hair so glossy and shiny?
I mean, I would say, I'm quite lucky with my hair because this is my natural hair colour and stuff. So, you know, I don't dye it, and that always helps. But what do? I use a good shampoo and conditioner. I use frizzies, and then I use an oil. And then the top trick is if you blow dry your hair, I blow dry it hot, obviously, but then the last couple of minutes do it cold, and that like smooths the follicles rather. And apparently that helps with the glossiness, but I don't know if that's actually a secret or if it's really well known.
It is always massively glossy. Like, I thought that when I first met you, I thought it might be a wig.
Really interesting. No, it's not a wig. Normally, what I get is the one with the fringe, and people are like, "Oh, yeah, you know, that's Natasha." Yeah.
Not the one with the wig.
No, not the one with the wig. That's the first time I've had that, so I'll take it.
But it's a compliment.
How have you been coping with your hair, your beautiful hair, over lockdown?
I mean, I've had to cut my own fringe for the first. I've had my fringe since I was about 14. And I have had to cut it myself. And I haven't done too bad a job, but if you look too closely, it's not great. But it's grown super long, actually. It's not been too bad. I've got quite a simple haircut, so it hasn't been awful. But I do have a haircut booked in for mid-April that I'm very excited for.
Yeah, me too.
I think we're all excited for that. Although I cut mine off last week in a Britney fashion. So
I actually, Tommy, I think we had the same hairdresser for a period of time.
Well, I've always had the same hairdresser for 25 years. Emma.
I think Emma. Yeah. I went to Emma for a little while, yeah.
Well, that is why, because I've said to, like, my friend Mel, like, I worked with Mel for years, and I was like, I've always liked your hair. And she goes to Emma as well.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's who your next guest needs to be.
But also, the amazing thing about Emma is that she trains George Northwood, who is now the biggest celebrity hairdresser, who did Meghan's hair for her wedding, and Alexa Chung is his what do you call it when someone's the
apprentice?
No, Muse.
Okay.
The Muse, yeah.
And just released their own product range, haven't they?
Yes, I know.
George Northwood, yeah.
So, Tom, what you're actually saying is you love other people's hair because they've got the same hairdresser as you, and it looks like yours.
No, because I don't think our hair looks it's all similar, but I can see a nice haircut, and I'm just an admirer.
Just appreciating it.
I'll take it.
Yeah, take it. Okay, right. So we're going to move on. We're going to do some Queens of Agony. So, Natasha, you're going to stay in the throne room.
I am, yes.
And become an honorary member of the Old Queens.
Yep.
Because you're in no way an old queen, as far as I can tell. So I'm going to do a big gong. And yeah, we have a couple of interesting questions this week. So, dear old queens and Natasha, I'm in my mid-50s and I've been single for over 2 years now. About a year ago, I met a guy in a sex club, and it was before lockdown. Our connection was mostly sex, and we made a little sex bubble over the first lockdown. As the year progressed, we started to go to places, pubs, and went cycling. I never really had a gay best mate, as I was with my partner for a very long time, and we were mates. Anyway, this guy started to have feelings for me. It became more than sex, but I didn't feel the same way. I love him as a good friend, and we speak several times a week and meet up for a walk or a cycle and have a few gins at least once a week. We have spoken about our relationship, and I've been honest and said it wouldn't work between us. I want my next relationship to be the one. My dilemma is, what do I do if I meet another guy and I really like him? I don't want my mate getting hurt. His friendship means a lot to me. I know his feelings for me, and I don't want to hurt him. What do I do?
I think it's really sweet.
Yeah, I think it feels really, really thoughtful, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think that you could probably just lead the person into that journey with you. So maybe the first step would be to say, I'm looking for someone else, or I'm looking to meet someone special, and just baby steps, take them on the way with them, and they could, and then you're sort of like, I was going to say letting them down gently, but I think he's already let him down.
He's already said that, but they are kind of continuing a friendship and a relationship. He doesn't say that whether they're still having sex or not, but I'm assuming that they are.
It's gone all about the cycling, right?
Yeah, it's all about the cycling and the gym. Gin, not the gym. Natasha, what do you think?
Well, I think that it sounds like he's already had that conversation, which is really great. And I suppose for the person that's writing in, if they have been clear about that, then they are obviously, entitled to be in a relationship or to meet someone new or whatever. But I suppose perhaps it might also be about thinking what it is about the person that stops them from wanting a relationship with them. And is it that they just want to be friends? And then just maybe, exploring that a little bit and being like, well, these are the reasons that I think it won't work. And this is what I still want to be friends with you. I still want to maintain this friendship and this level of kind of connection.
Yeah.
What do you think the reasons could be?
I don't know. I was going to play devil's advocate a bit here, because I'm wondering why this person isn't someone that they could have a relationship. They're obviously attracted to them because they have sex. Mm-hmm. They like them as a friend. They enjoy spending time with them. And I'm wondering...
Is it about the money? Is that what you're going to say?
I wasn't going to say that. But maybe that's a factor. I don't know. It's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously... I think a lot of a relationship, like a long-term relationship, is friendship and that companionship. And I think people get really hung up on finding the one. And we have because we have all of these images in media and films bombarded at us that there is that one special person out there for us. And that kind of myth, in a way, I think, makes us overlook people that are perfectly good for us to have a relationship with. But I'm just putting it out there.
I think you've thought about this quite a lot, Bernie.
Just off the top of my head, too.
I think, I agree with you, Bernie. I think long-term relationships are, a friendship with other stuff added. And I think that, the writer said I've never had a gay best friend before. So therefore, is it that actually you're scared of ruining the friendship if you take it into something different? And actually, would it ruin the friendship, or would it be just even better?
Yeah. Would it be a really good relationship?
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of a friendship. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I think you're right. I think he's been upfront with this guy. But also, I think he needs to think about, what is this relationship and why don't I want to date him? And would he actually be a good person to date?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Because I think we just overlook people sometimes. And also there's a huge attitude these days, I think, where everybody's looking for something better. So actually, but they never actually find what they want.
I think there's something for me about wanting to be with someone that aligns with your politics. And I can have sex with someone that doesn't align with my politics. And also I can be friends with someone that doesn't align with my politics. Because I think you can just sort of go, I'm going to go home now, or I'll just leave you to that. But to be in a relationship with someone that doesn't really align is quite difficult, I think.
But can you overcome that? Can you overlook that?
Well, you'd probably have to work that out between us, that you never talk about anything other than domestics.
There are relationships in which that works, aren't there? But I think I think for me, I think it would feel like a really fundamental difference in maybe what we believed in and what we thought if we had different political views in that sense.
But I don't know. I'm asking you now. Can you be friends with people that you don't share the same politics with?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I think you're not sharing your life in the same way, are you?
Yeah.
You can have a kind of discussion and a conversation, but ultimately, like you say, you can leave them to it, or you can just avoid those topics, and maybe you can't do that in quite the same way.
Yeah, in a relationship. Yeah, I think in a relationship, I want someone who felt similar to me on certain issues. But then, opposites attract. Sometimes it makes the relationship lively because you're not liking the same things. I don't know. Anyway, I hope this listener sorts it out with them and they don't ruin their friendship. But, maybe think about, maybe it could be something more than just a friendship.
I think as well, though, just as a final point on that one, if it is genuinely that they're like, no, that's not it, then that's okay.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Then, it's all right for them to feel that way as well. And it's not that sense of like, oh, well, someone likes you, so therefore.
Oh, yes, no. But the reason why I've said it is because it's like, there's obviously a lot of good things about this relationship. So it's like, there is sex, there's companionship, you enjoy each other's company.
Cycling and gin.
Yeah, it's like, that sounds like my ideal relationship.
Yeah. There is, I think, taking friendship to something else, there's always a bit of fear, right? So, is it fear or is it something else?
Yeah.
Totally. I knew you'd be good at this point in the podcast, Natasha.
Yeah. You're way better than us. Anyway, so we normally give one-word answers.
I know that's not true.
Right. Oh, this is a complicated one.
Okay.
There's like a little menage a trois going on in this one. So, dear old queens, 2 of my friends are dating now, and I have a massive crush on one of them. How do I deal with this? I recently found out that 2 of my best friends, a guy and a girl, are dating. They've been hiding it from me for a while, but now that I know, they are very comfortable touching each other and kissing each other in front of me. It's very awkward for me because I had a crush on the guy for a while now. He somewhat knows about this and keeps joking about having a threesome. I made it clear that it would fuck up our friendship, so I don't want to even think about that. I like both these people and want them to be in my life, but I'm struggling to adjust with their relationship. What can I do to make it easier for me?
It's a tricky one.
Yeah. Well, it's an unrequited love thing, and I think I've definitely had a lot of that in my life. I don't know about you, Tommy. What about you, Natasha? Have you had some unrequited love?
100%, yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah. So what do we think? What can they do to make it easy on themselves?
I would, if it was me, I would just try and brave that storm, really, and just carry on, because they're obviously friends. And I mean, the beauty about those kind of feelings of unrequited love, in my experience, is they do diminish after a while.
Yeah.
And, you know, you've got some nice friends there, so just try to think that this is a moment in time that will eventually dissolve.
Yeah. What do you think, Natasha?
I think crushes can be really fun. And if someone's got a crush on, you know, a person in their life, I think if you can kind of almost not take that too seriously, that can be really entertaining and fun. But I think also, I would say, it sounds like the friend perhaps isn't being that nice in this situation. Like, if he knows that his friend is attracted to him and he's making jokes about it and stuff in front of his partner, then maybe that's not the nicest way to be handling that.
But maybe he does really want a threesome, and maybe that would be... Maybe he doesn't sort of see that that there will be a problem about him suggesting that.
Yeah.
Maybe he's bisexual or wants to explore that. But obviously, when somebody else's feelings are involved, it all gets a little bit complicated, doesn't it? I'm wondering that if this guy is getting hurt, maybe he needs a little bit of space from this friendship in order to kind of process his feelings and process their relationship, and also open up his kind of friendship group so he can meet somebody else who he can actually fall in love with and have a relationship with. Do you know what I mean? I think it's maybe all a bit insular. It's maybe got a little bit dysfunctional, so maybe a little bit of space. I'm not saying break friends with them, but maybe he needs to find some other friends so it will balance those feelings out, and actually he can get some perspective on that.
So the complete opposite of my advice.
Well, as we said, Tommy, opposites attract, right?
Do you think the person could have a conversation like with the friends? Because he said like, I assume it's a he actually, I don't know, but said, you know, they're really comfortable, they touch each other in front of me and stuff like that. And if there's stuff like that feels a bit weird, could it be that there's a conversation there of like, this is cool, but I find it a bit strange, and can we, you know, make it so I feel like less of a third wheel? Without making the couple feel uncomfortable either, but just that sense of like putting some ground rules.
Yeah, or, you know, if he's jokingly saying have a threesome, maybe they have a conversation about that.
Yeah.
And decide whether they all want to do it or not. Because if that's on the table, it's like, I think the communication, as always, is key. And maybe that's, all of this is obviously affecting their friendship, their relationships. So if they want to do that, maybe they do try it, but they put down some ground rules and make sure it doesn't really ultimately affect their friendships in the long run.
I'll go with that one.
Yeah, okay.
It seems more fun. There's a threesome involved.
Of course. Right, so this is another long one. And it is about opposites, I think. So, dear old queens, how important is sharing the same religious, and I guess we could say political beliefs, or lack of them, in a relationship? How much does it matter that your partner shares the same religious or political beliefs as you? I'm an atheist, and I'm open to dating people with different beliefs. However, I've just had very bad luck with certain guys of certain religious beliefs. I had a terrible date yesterday, and while there were definitely other problems with the date, the way he thought about things and expressed his religious views felt like an insurmountable lack of compatibility. He asked me about drag queens, and I mentioned Trixie Mattel and Katya from Drag Race. He went on a huge rant about them being disrespectful that devolved into a rant about evolution and how it's stupid to believe in everything just happens by itself. I didn't engage with the topic because I knew things would get heated if I did. I started feeling like I just want to stick with atheists and agnostics. The way that atheists and religious people see the world and approach problems are just vastly different. I just feel both sides feel like they're stopping themselves from expressing themselves to avoid antagonizing their partner, and resentment will build over time. What do the old queens think?
When you were reading that, Natasha was nodding when we were talking about Trixie and Natasha and Katia, sorry. Is that something that I don't know about?
Do you know Trixie Mattel?
Yeah,
Katia?
but what have they commented about religion? And...
But they're just really silly. I think a lot of their stuff is just off the wall, off the cuff remarks. I've not heard anything particularly from them, which is...
It's not trending on Twitter at the moment.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Not that I know of.
I would thought I must be missing out on something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that this religious guy just thinks they're quite silly and superfluous. I don't know.
Okay.
But I don't know. But what do you think, Natasha? I'll go straight to you on this one.
I think that it's really tricky because I think
Trixie.
Not to Trixie, exactly. I think I think it's really important that the person doesn't generalize about people of faith or religious people in general, but it does sound like they've had some pretty poor experiences. So maybe it's not about that person's religion, but just about who that person is. And again, kind of what we were talking about earlier on, like finding the things that you connect on rather than things that you don't connect on. But it does feel like maybe there's some real fundamental differences just within those people that isn't really to do with religion, but is maybe about the way that they express themselves or the way that they share their opinions.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because Tommy and I are quite spiritual in some ways, not in a kind of religious way, but in other ways. And I think a lot of people around us kind of poo-poo that. And so I don't necessarily talk about that very much because I know that the people that I care about don't particularly like to talk about those things, or they don't believe in the same things that I do. So I never push any of that. And I think it's just about being aware of those things and who you can talk about that stuff to and who you can't, really. And I guess it is quite a big thing in a relationship. But if you, like you said, if you put in some of those ground rules, maybe that's okay. You just decide that you don't talk about that with that person.
I mean, for me, it depends exactly. It depends kind of what it is, really. But we were talking about the Jewish religion, and I just found that the way that they were talking about in their presentation about it, it just felt so beautiful and so much kind of sense of ritual around it that I would love to be a friendly spectator on that, really. And if it was something like that I could enjoy but not be part of, then I would actually really value that, I think, within a relationship. Like, I always love going out with someone that is from a different nationality, because I love hearing them speaking on their phone to their mum, or they're cooking up some beautiful dish that is traditional for them, and it's very different to me. So if you can enjoy the difference, then that's a nice thing.
Yeah, it's about respecting those differences and appreciating them rather than being negative about them, isn't it? I think. Just because people don't have the same views as you doesn't mean that you need to put those views down. It just means we agree to disagree,
And it's how that person expresses those beliefs, isn't it? So,
totally.
in the letter, that idea of got kind of quite annoyed about those people and had a bit of a rant. And I'm putting words in their mouth there, but just that idea of that not being a kind of a friendly, nice conversation, instead it being this is what I think. And actually, I think agreeing with both of you, you can share perspectives and share differences, and they can be really different, but that can be really interesting. But that doesn't feel like it was what was happening in that instance.
What does my hairdresser always say to me? Just because you've got an opinion doesn't mean it's right.
Very true, very wise words.
Anyway, hopefully that's given some perspective on that one. We have this is our final question, so we have it's a bit more light-hearted, I believe.
There's a lot of them tonight, it seems.
Well, there's only 4, but they were big
right.
ones. They were like 3 massive ones. So, dear old Queens, now that everything is on the brink of opening up and open-air sports are allowed to happen, and soon will be the gyms. So what recommendations do you have for bringing my gay fashion game to the gym when they do? Also, I'm thinking about the body hair situation. Shave, scape, or bush? What are your thoughts? I'm assuming that's for the changing rooms and the shower. I don't.
Well, I'm interested in the gay fashion game because I've been doing a lot of running during lockdown, and I quite like this look of sort of very tight lycra leggings, but with shorts over the top. And I'm going to try that as a look next.
Okay, yeah. A lot of people have, and a lot of guys have adopted that at the gym, in the gym, and outside the gym. I mean, before gyms were closed. I don't know, Natasha. What's your gym fashion game like?
I would say it's not the best, but I would say that like getting something that you feel all right in does make going to the gym more enjoyable. So I think I used to be very much like massive baggy t-shirt, and actually like you don't feel nice in that. So I think getting something that feels nice, but like leisure wear is a real thing, isn't it? So there's going to be loads of cool stuff around. I suppose it just depends how much money you want to drop on it, because it is pricey.
Yeah, I think you can get some nice stuff cheap though, if necessary. What
do you wear to the gym, Natasha?
I tend to wear gym leggings and a vest. So super simple, I'm afraid. I'm not as stylish as
What colours are we talking about?
Quite a lot of purple or grey. Generally not massively patterned, but with something, like with a racing stripe or something.
Do you wear a lot of purple?
A reasonable amount of purple. My favourite colour is burgundy, so...
Okay. I wondered if there is a connection between purple and sort of queers, generally.
I think there definitely is a connection between purple and queers, yeah, absolutely.
Do you know what that is?
I mean, so there's the idea of lavender, certainly, and the purple as in like, a mixture of pink and blue. But have you got a different take?
No, I don't know. I'm totally going off topic, but I suddenly thought of it.
It's really weird because I read something today when I was doing my research for the Cabinet of Queeriousities earlier. It was about flowers actually, and obviously it's spring, and apparently wearing carnations was like a secret message for being gay.
The green carnation as well. Yeah,
and then lesbians also had a flower code as well. It might have been lavender actually.
Yeah, so there's a few. Weirdly enough, we've just been doing some chats about this in one of my groups. But so lavender, green carnations, like as Tommy said, that came from Oscar Wilde. What else is there? Pansies. Pansies are super queer too.
And the Pansy Project was a beautiful project that happened where they planted pansies in places of homophobic attacks. Yeah. Is that right? So there was beautiful pansies everywhere.
Yeah. I love a pansy. On the second one, to scape or to shave? Or to bush?
I would say that just depends on what you want to do.
It's really personal preference, isn't it?
I would go, what is escape then? I'm probably more scaping than bush, but I wouldn't shave. I like to have a little bit of hair, but not loads.
Yeah.
I tidy it up.
I think that the trend...
But it's totally up to you.
The trend with, obviously, hairy gays, like I am one, is probably just to be quite natural. But I remember in the 90s, like being hairy was not a thing, and I had to clipper and shave everything in the 90s instead of being as natural and beautiful as I am now. But yeah, it's a general thing. I mean, I don't know, Natasha, what do you think? Is it too much of a personal question to ask you?
No, not at all. I think, like each to their own. I think there's been so many trends, and I think if you think back to kind of 10 years ago and Brazilians, you know, and I think we've really moved quite far away from that. But I think you've got to do what makes you feel comfortable, and that's only you can decide that.
Yeah, do what makes you feel good, whether it, whatever you want to, what makes you feel comfortable in the gym, what makes you feel comfortable. If you want to be super tight and trendy, do that. If you want to be baggy and comfortable, do that. And the same with your hair, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the same with everything.
Yeah, the same with everything.
You do you.
Yeah, you do you. And me be me. Natasha, thank you so much for being in our throne room and joining us on the podcast. You've been amazing today.
You've been brilliant.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
And you've actually dished out some good advice for a change. I mean, compared to me and Tommy.
It's true.
But yeah, thank you so much. And please say goodbye to our lovely listeners.
I will. Yeah, no, it's been absolute a joy to spend an evening chatting with you both. So thank you very much. And yeah, I'll speak to you all really soon.
Thank you. Tommy, say goodbye on this Easter Sunday.
Oh, well, happy Easter, everyone. And I hope you get what you want.
Yeah. Love egg or chocolate egg?
Love, I think.
Okay. Love eggs all round. Thank you for listening. Natasha, thank you. Tommy, thank you. Happy Easter, everyone, and enjoy the chocolate and the roast or whatever you're doing. And we will see you next time on What That Old Queen.
You have been listening to What That Old Queen, written and presented by Tom Marshman and Bernie Hodges. The show was produced by Bernie Hodges for Hodge Podcasting in 2021. If you have a question for the Old Queens, or you'd like to be a guest, or you want to sponsor a show and give us lots of money, you can email hello@thatoldqueen.com or find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.